The jungle moon of Velar 7 was quiet that morning. Mist rose from the dark green trees and hung in the air like smoke. The sky was orange and purple, painted by the light of two distant suns. It was beautiful in a strange and lonely way. Lieutenant Daniel Carter sat in the cockpit of his small shuttle, watching the readings on his screen. He was a medic aboard the research vessel Starbound Hope, and today his job was simple. Fly down to the surface. Collect air samples, fly back up. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. Daniel was a calm man in his early 30s. He had brown hair that was always a little messy and tired eyes that had seen too many long shifts. He was not a hero. He was not a soldier. He was just a man who knew how to heal people, and that was enough for him. He finished the last of his coffee and set the cup aside. The scanner beeped. Air samples complete. He reached for the controls to begin his return to the ship. Then he saw it. A light on his console flashed red, a distress signal, weak but close, very close. Daniel sat up straight and looked at the data. The signal was coming from less than 2 kilometers away, somewhere deep in the jungle. It was not a human signal. The frequency was different, the pattern unfamiliar, but it was definitely a cry for help. He thought about calling the Starbound Hope. He thought about waiting for backup, but the signal was fading. Whoever was out there did not have much time. Daniel made his choice. He turned the shuttle and flew toward the signal. The jungle below was thick and wild. Huge trees with blue leaves blocked most of the ground from view, but then he saw it. A clearing torn open by something that had fallen from the sky. Smoke rose from the wreckage of a crashed ship. It was not like any ship Daniel had ever seen. The hull was made of something that looked like glass or crystal, now shattered into 1,000 pieces across the mossy ground. Strange symbols were carved into the broken panels. The design was elegant, almost beautiful, even in destruction. Daniel landed his shuttle at the edge of the clearing and grabbed his medical kit. His heart was beating fast as he stepped out into the warm, wet air. The smell of burning metal filled his nose. He moved carefully through the wreckage, stepping over twisted pieces of alien technology. The distress signal was coming from inside the main section of the ship, or what was left of it. He found her near the center. She was not human, that was clear at once. Her skin was silver, smooth and soft like polished metal. Her hair was long and white, spread across the ground like silk. Her face was almost human in shape, but her features were sharper, more refined. Her eyes were closed, but he could see the color of her blood. It was pale blue, and there was too much of it pooling beneath her. A piece of her own ship had pierced her side. The wound was deep and terrible. Daniel knelt beside her and opened his kit. His hands moved without thinking. He had done this 1,000 times before, but never like this. Never with someone so different. Her eyes opened. They were violet, bright, and full of fear. She tried to speak, but her words were in a language he could not understand. His translator device clicked and hummed, but it found no match. It did not matter. He understood her fear. He understood her pain. "It is okay," he said softly. "I am here to help. I am a doctor." She stared at him, her breathing shallow and fast. She did not know what he was. She did not know if he was a friend or an enemy, but she was too weak to fight. Daniel worked quickly. He sealed the wound as best he could, stopping the worst of the bleeding. He gave her a shot for the pain, hoping it would work on her biology. Her body relaxed a little. The fear in her eyes became something else, something like hope. But she had lost too much blood. Her pulse was weak and getting weaker. She was dying, and there was nothing in his kit that could save her. Daniel sat back on his heels and tried to think. He had no plasma for her. He had no blood supply that matched her kind. The Starbound Hope was too far away. By the time help arrived, she would be gone. He looked at the wound, at the blue blood staining the ground. Blue blood, iron-based most likely, similar to human blood in basic structure. A wild idea came into his mind, a dangerous idea. He pulled out his scanner and ran a quick analysis. Her blood was indeed iron-based. Her cells used oxygen in much the same way human cells did. The proteins were different, but the foundation was the same. Could human blood work? Could his blood save her? The scanner gave him no clear answer. The results were uncertain. It might work. It might kill her faster. It might kill him. Daniel looked at the alien woman. She was young, he realized. Despite her strange appearance, there was something in her face that reminded him of his younger sister back on Earth, someone with a whole life ahead of her, someone who did not deserve to die alone on a forgotten moon. He made his decision. He pulled out a transfusion kit from his bag. He had brought it for emergencies, never thinking he would use it like this. He inserted a needle into his own arm and connected the line to hers. His blood began to flow into her body. The alien woman's eyes went wide. She looked at the tube connecting them, at the red blood mixing with her blue. She did not understand what he was doing, but she did not stop him. Daniel felt himself grow dizzy as the minutes passed. He gave more blood than was safe. He knew the risks. He did not care. Her color began to change. The pale blue of her skin grew a little warmer. Her breathing steadied. Her pulse grew stronger. It was working. Daniel kept the transfusion going until he could give no more. Then he pulled the needle from his arm and pressed a bandage to the wound. His vision was blurry. His body felt cold and weak. But when he looked at her, he saw that she was alive. She was still alive. He managed to carry her to his shuttle before his strength gave out completely. He set the autopilot to return to the Starboard Hope and sent an emergency message to the ship. Then everything went dark. When Daniel woke up, he was in the medical bay of the Starboard Hope. Dr. Lisa Park was standing over him, her face a mixture of relief and anger. "You almost killed yourself," she said. Daniel tried to sit up. His body ached everywhere. "The woman, the alien, is she alive?" Lisa paused, her expression softened. "Yes, she is alive. Against all odds, she is alive. Whatever you did, it worked." Daniel lay back down and closed his eyes. He did not know who the alien woman was. He did not know where she came from or why she had crashed on that moon. He did not know what would happen next. But she was alive, and right now that was enough. 3 days passed aboard the Starboard Hope. The ship had moved to a neutral station in the expanse, a busy crossroads of space where many different species came to trade and talk. News of the rescued alien had spread quickly, and now everyone was waiting to see what would happen. Daniel spent most of those 3 days in bed, recovering from the blood loss. Dr. Lisa Park kept a close watch on him, making sure he ate well and rested properly. She told him he was lucky to be alive. He had given almost too much of himself to save a stranger. But Daniel did not feel lucky. He felt restless. He wanted to know if the alien woman was okay. He wanted to know if what he had done had truly helped her or if he had only delayed the end. On the morning of the 4th day, Lisa came to his room with a small smile on her face. "She is awake," Lisa said, "and she is asking for you." Daniel got out of bed slowly. His legs were still weak, but he did not care. He followed Lisa down the corridor to the isolation ward where the alien woman was being kept. The room was clean and white, filled with soft light. She was sitting up in her bed, her silver skin glowing faintly in the brightness. Her long white hair had been cleaned and brushed, falling around her shoulders like a waterfall. Her violet eyes turned to Daniel as he entered, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then she spoke, and this time he understood her. The translation team had finally cracked her language. "You are the one who saved me," she said. Her voice was soft and musical like wind through bells. Daniel nodded. "I am Daniel Carter. I am a medic on this ship." She studied him with those strange, beautiful eyes. "I am third daughter of the sovereign house of rulers of the Dominion." Daniel blinked. He did not know what the Dominion was, but the way she said it made it sound important, very important. "You are a princess," he said slowly. Lowered her head. "I was, perhaps I still am. I do not know what has happened to my family since I fled." She told him her story then. She had been on a diplomatic mission to a neighboring system when her ship was attacked. Assassins had been waiting for her, hidden among her own crew. They had tried to kill her, but she had escaped in a small transport. She had fled into unknown space, hoping to lose them. But her ship was damaged and she had crashed on Velar 7. "If you had not found me," she said, "I would have died there, alone and forgotten." Daniel shook his head. Anyone would have done the same. Looked at him strangely. "No, they would not. Among my people, blood is sacred. It carries our memory, our history, our soul. To share blood is the greatest gift one can give. It is an act reserved only for bonded mates or sworn protectors." Daniel felt his face grow warm. "I did not know that. I just wanted to save your life." "That is what makes it remarkable," said. "You did not know what you were doing. You had no reason to help me. I was a stranger, an alien. You risked your own life without any promise of reward." She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, like touching polished stone. "Among my people, that makes you my guardian, my protector. The bond cannot be undone." Daniel did not know what to say. He had just been doing his job. He had never asked for any bond or title, but looking into his eyes, he saw that this meant everything to her. He could not reject it. "I accept," he said quietly. Smiled, and for the first time since he had found her, she looked at peace. But the peace did not last long. The next day, a diplomatic frigate arrived at the station. The ship was massive and beautiful, made of the same crystal-like material as wrecked transport. It shone like a jewel against the darkness of space. A team of physicians came aboard the Starboard Hope to examine their princess. They were tall and elegant, with the same silver skin and violet eyes as. They treated the humans with polite distance, as if they were curious animals rather than equals. The physicians ran test after test on. They took samples of her blood, scanned her body, and studied every detail of her recovery. And what they found shocked them. Her wounds had healed faster than any wound should heal. Her strength had returned in days rather than weeks. Her senses were sharper than before. And most surprising of all, the human blood in her system had not faded away. It had bonded with her cells, becoming part of her. The lead physician, a stern man named, called a meeting with the captain of the Starboard Hope and the human medical team. "This is unprecedented," said, his voice tight with something that sounded like fear. "Human blood is not just compatible with biology. It is superior. It heals us. It strengthens us. It does things our own blood cannot do." Captain Susan Gray, a strong woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward in her chair. "What exactly are you saying?" Looked at Daniel, then back at the captain. "I am saying that this human medic may have accidentally discovered something that will change the fate of my people." He explained then what the humans did not know. 300 years ago, a genetic plague had swept through the noble houses. It had weakened their bloodlines, making each generation frailer than the last. The royal families were dying slowly, year by year, with no cure in sight. But now human blood offered hope. "If what we have seen in the princess is true," said, "then human blood could save us. It could restore our strength. It could end the plague." The room was silent. Daniel felt the weight of 100 eyes on him. He had just wanted to save one life. Now he was being told he might save an entire civilization. Captain Gray spoke carefully. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" Straightened his back. "I must take this news to the sovereign court on Prime. The king himself will want to meet the human who saved his daughter, and I believe he will have a proposal for your people." Within hours, the Starboard Hope received a formal invitation to visit Prime, the of the Dominion. It was the first time any human ship had been asked to enter space. Daniel stood at the observation window, watching the stars, came to stand beside him. "Are you afraid?" she asked. Daniel thought about it. "A little. This is bigger than anything I ever expected." Nodded. "It is bigger than any of us expected. But I am glad it was you, Daniel Carter. I am glad it was someone with a kind heart." She touched his arm gently. "Whatever happens next, you will not face it alone. That is my promise to you." Daniel looked at her and managed a small smile. He did not know what waited for them on Prime. He did not know if they would see humans as friends or as something to be used, but he knew that he had done the right thing on that jungle moon. And whatever came next, he would face it the same way he faced everything else, one step at a time. The Starward Hope turned toward space, and the stars rushed past like rivers of light. A new chapter was beginning, for Daniel, and for two civilizations that had never met before. Nothing would ever be the same again. Prime was the most beautiful world Daniel had ever seen. The planet was covered in forests of silver trees and oceans that glowed a soft blue under the light of 3 pale moons. Cities rose from the landscape like sculptures made of glass and crystal, their towers reaching toward the sky like fingers trying to touch the stars. The Starward Hope landed at the Royal Spaceport, a massive platform of white stone that floated above the capital city. Thousands had gathered to watch the human ship arrive. They stood in perfect silence, their violet eyes fixed on the strange vessel from a distant world. Daniel walked down the landing ramp beside Captain Susan Gray and Ambassador Laura. Laura was a sharp woman with dark hair and clever eyes. She had been sent from Earth to handle this first contact, arriving on a fast transport just 2 days before they reached Prime. She moved with confidence, but Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders. This was the biggest moment of her career. Walked with them, dressed in robes of deep purple that marked her as royalty. She held her head high, but Daniel noticed how her eyes moved across the crowd, searching for threats. She had not forgotten the assassins who had tried to kill her. A group of officials waited at the end of the ramp. At their center stood a tall man with silver skin and hair that had turned white with age. His eyes were the same violet but they burned with a fierce intelligence. He wore a crown of delicate crystal on his head. King, ruler of the Dominion. When saw her father, her calm mask cracked. She ran forward and threw herself into his arms. The king held her tight, his eyes closing with relief. For a moment, he was not a ruler. He was just a father who had gotten his daughter back. The crowd murmured with surprise. It was rare to see such emotion from the royal family. King released and turned to face the humans. His eyes found Daniel, and he studied the young medic with an expression that was impossible to read. "You are Daniel Carter," the king said. His voice was deep and carried the weight of centuries of authority. Daniel nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." The king walked forward until he stood directly in front of Daniel. He was taller than Daniel by nearly a foot, and he looked down at the human with those ancient, knowing eyes. "My daughter tells me you gave your blood to save her life. She tells me you did this without knowing who she was or what reward you might receive." Daniel swallowed. "That is true, Your Majesty. I am a medic. Saving lives is what I do." The king was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he placed his hand over his heart and bowed his head. "Then I owe you a debt that cannot be measured, Daniel Carter. You have returned to me something more precious than all the stars in my dominion." The crowd gasped. A king had never bowed to anyone, let alone an alien from an unknown world. This was a gesture of profound respect. Daniel did not know what to do. He looked at who gave him a small nod. He placed his own hand over his heart and bowed in return. "I am honored, Your Majesty, but I was only doing my duty." King straightened and smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a man who had carried heavy burdens for too long. "Perhaps that is what makes you worthy of honor, young human. You see duty where others see opportunity. The formal ceremony that followed was long and complicated. Daniel stood beside Captain Gray and Ambassador as they welcomed them with songs and speeches. He did not understand most of what was said, but he felt the importance of the moment. Two civilizations were meeting for the first time, and the future hung in the balance. That evening, Daniel was invited to a private dinner with the king and his family. The royal dining hall was a vast room with windows that looked out over the glowing city. The table was set with food that Daniel did not recognize, but quietly told him which dishes were safe for human stomachs. King sat at the head of the table, with on his right and Daniel on his left. Ambassador sat further down, talking quietly with the king's advisors. Captain Gray had returned to the ship to oversee repairs. "I must speak plainly with you, Daniel Carter," the king said, setting down his glass. "My daughter's recovery has revealed something that my physicians have confirmed with many tests. Human blood has properties that can heal our people. It can cure the plague that has been killing us for 3 centuries. Daniel listened carefully. He had expected this conversation. "I wish to propose an alliance between our peoples," the king continued. "Humans would provide blood freely given by volunteers. In exchange, we would share our technology, our star maps, and our protection. Together, we could be stronger than either of us alone." Daniel looked at Ambassador. She nodded slightly, giving him permission to speak. "Your Majesty, I am just a medic. I cannot speak for all of humanity, but I believe that if you ask for help, many humans will answer. It is in our nature to help those in need." The king's eyes softened. "That is what I have come to understand about your people, Daniel. You are young by the standards of the galaxy. Your civilization is small and your technology is simple, but there is something in your hearts that is rare and precious. You care about strangers. You sacrifice for those you do not know." He leaned forward, his voice dropping low. "My people were once like that, but centuries of power and plague have made us cold. We have forgotten how to give without expecting something in return. Perhaps your people can remind us." But not everyone in the room shared the king's view. At the far end of the table sat General, commander of the military. He was a large man with hard features and eyes like chips of ice. He had said nothing during the entire dinner, but Daniel could feel his hatred like heat from a fire. When the meal ended, General approached Daniel in the corridor outside. "Do not think that saving one princess makes you special, human," said, his voice a low growl. "You are primitives. Your blood may have value, but you yourselves are nothing. If it were up to me, I would take what we need and leave your kind to rot in the outer darkness." Daniel met the general's gaze without flinching. He had faced bullies before. He knew that showing fear would only make things worse. "I am sorry you feel that way, General, but your king seems to disagree with you." His face twisted with anger. "My king is old and weak. He has been blinded by sentiment, but kings do not live forever, human. Remember that." He turned and walked away, his boots echoing on the stone floor. Daniel watched him go, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. He did not know exactly what was planning, but he knew trouble when he saw it. Later that night, found Daniel on one of the palace balconies, looking up at the 3 moons. "You met General," she said. "It was not a question." "Yes, he does not like humans very much." Came to stand beside him. "Is a traditionalist. He believes they are superior to all other species. He thinks mixing our blood with yours is a corruption, an insult to our heritage." "And what do you think?" Daniel asked. Was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to face him, her violet eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I think you saved my life when you had no reason to. I think that kind of courage matters more than the color of anyone's blood, and I think that my people need to learn that lesson before it is too late." She reached out and took his hand. "Be careful, Daniel is dangerous. He has allies in the military and among the noble houses. If he decides you are a threat, he will try to destroy you." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "I have faced dangerous situations before." "Not like this," said softly. "This is a different kind of war, a war of shadows and whispers. Promise me you will be careful." Daniel looked into her eyes and saw real fear there, not for herself, but for him. "I promise," he said. But even as he spoke the words, he knew that promises might not be enough. The storm was coming, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The Treaty of Shared Blood was to be signed on the 10th day after the humans arrived on Prime. It was a historic moment. For the first time in recorded history, the Dominion would enter into a formal alliance with an alien species. The galaxy was watching. The signing ceremony was held in the Great Hall of Unity, a massive building of white stone and crystal that had stood for 2,000 years. Kings and queens had been crowned there. Wars had been ended there. And now, a new chapter would begin there. Daniel stood near the back of the hall, watching as Ambassador Laura prepared to sign the treaty on behalf of humanity. Captain Susan Gray stood beside her, along with a small honor guard from the Starward Hope. They were dressed in their best uniforms, their faces serious and proud. King sat on his throne at the front of the hall, with beside him. The princess caught Daniel's eye and gave him a small smile. She was dressed in ceremonial robes of silver and gold, and she had never looked more beautiful or more regal. But Daniel could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The hall was filled with nobles and military officers, but the atmosphere was tense. He noticed that General was not in his usual place near the throne. In fact, he was nowhere to be seen. Daniel leaned toward Cole, the security chief of the Starward Hope. Was a big man with short gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too many fights. He had been watching the crowd with the same unease that Daniel felt. "Something is wrong," Daniel whispered. Nodded slightly. "I know, stay sharp." Ambassador stepped forward to sign the treaty. The king rose from his throne to meet her. The hall fell silent as the two leaders faced each other across the ancient document. "Today, we join our peoples in friendship and trust," King said, his voice carrying through the hall. "Let this treaty be a symbol of what we can achieve when we choose unity over fear." He lifted his pen to sign. And then the world exploded. The first blast came from the main doors, throwing them open in a shower of stone and fire. Armed soldiers poured into the hall, their weapons raised. They wore the uniforms of the military, but their faces were covered with masks. The second blast came from above. A section of the crystal ceiling shattered, and more soldiers dropped down on ropes, firing into the crowd. Screams filled the air. Nobles ran in every direction, pushing and shoving to escape. The honor guard from the Starward Hope drew their weapons and formed a protective circle around Ambassador. Daniel did not think. He ran toward. He reached her just as a masked soldier lunged at her with a blade. Daniel grabbed the attacker's arm and twisted it hard, using a move he had learned in basic combat training years ago. The blade fell from the soldier's hand, and Daniel kicked him away. "Daniel," shouted, her eyes wide with shock. "Stay behind me," Daniel said. He picked up the fallen blade and held it in front of him. It was not much, but it was something. More soldiers closed in around them. Daniel could see General now, standing at the center of the chaos with a cold smile on his face. He had removed his mask and was watching the destruction with satisfaction. "The time of corruption is over," shouted. "The will not pollute their sacred blood with alien filth. I declare myself Regent Protector until a worthy heir can be found." Daniel saw that the king had been wounded. A plasma bolt had struck his shoulder, and he had fallen to the floor. His guards were trying to protect him, but they were outnumbered. Ambassador had been seized by two of soldiers. Her hands were bound behind her back, and a blade was pressed to her throat. "Surrender now, humans," called out, "or your ambassador dies." Cole stepped forward, his weapon still raised. There was blood on his shoulder where a plasma bolt had grazed him, but he showed no sign of pain. Let her go. This does not have to end in more death. Laughed, death. This is just the beginning. Take the humans to the cells. We will decide what to do with them later. The soldiers moved forward. Daniel knew they were outnumbered and there was no way to win this fight here and now. He caught his eye and gave a small nod. They needed to survive first, then they could plan. Daniel lowered his blade and allowed the soldiers to bind his hands. Was seized as well, her eyes burning with anger but her body still. They were led out of the hall and down into the depths of the palace, into the cold stone cells that lay beneath the beautiful crystal towers. The cells were dark and damp, carved from ancient rock. Daniel was thrown into one with and two other members of the Starbound Hope's crew, was taken somewhere else, deeper into the prison. Sat against the wall, pressing his hand against his wounded shoulder. That went badly. Daniel did not answer. He was thinking. The cells were old, which meant they might have weaknesses. The guards were confident, which meant they might be careless. We need to get out of here, he said finally. Looked at him. Any ideas? Daniel studied the walls, the door, the small window that let in a sliver of light. He remembered the maps of the palace that had shown him during the journey to Prime. She had been proud of her home, eager to share its history with him. There are service tunnels, he said slowly, old passages that run beneath the palace. They were used centuries ago to move supplies and servants without disturbing the nobles. Told me about them. Raised an eyebrow. And you think we can reach them from here? I think the palace dungeons are old enough that they might connect. Daniel pointed to a crack in the far wall where centuries of moisture had weakened the stone. If we can get through there, we might find a way out. Studied the crack, then nodded. It is a long shot, but long shots are better than no shots. They waited until the guards changed shifts, then went to work. The stone was old and crumbling, and with careful effort, they managed to widen the crack enough for a man to squeeze through. Beyond it was darkness, but Daniel could feel cool air moving against his face. The tunnels were real. They moved through the darkness for what felt like hours, following the flow of air and the faint sounds of the palace above them. Daniel led the way, trusting his memory of descriptions. At last they found a stairway that led upward. Daniel climbed carefully, listening for guards. The stairs ended at a small door, hidden behind a tapestry in what looked like a storage room. We are inside the palace, Daniel whispered. The holding cells where they keep important prisoners should be 2 levels down. Checked his wound. The bleeding had stopped, but he was pale. I will follow your lead. They moved through the shadows, avoiding patrols and using the service corridors to stay hidden. Daniel found the holding cells after 20 tense minutes of searching. 2 guards stood at the door. Handled them quickly and quietly. Even wounded, he was still the best fighter on the Starbound Hope. Inside the cells, they found Ambassador bruised but alive. Her eyes lit up with relief when she saw them. I knew you would come, she said. Daniel freed her bonds. Can you walk? I can run if I have to. They made their way toward the lower levels of the palace, where the broadcast center was located. Daniel had a plan now. A desperate plan, but the only one that might work. If he could reach the broadcast center, he could send a message to all of Prime. He could show the people what had done. He could let them choose for themselves. The broadcast room was guarded by only a few soldiers, and the others took them down while Daniel worked the controls. The technology was different from human tech, but the principles were the same. After a few tense minutes, he managed to activate the planetary broadcast system. His face appeared on every screen on Prime. People of, Daniel said, his voice rough but steady. My name is Daniel Carter. I am a human. I am the one who saved your princess when her ship crashed. I gave my blood because she was dying and I could not let that happen. He took a breath and continued. Today, General tried to kill your king and destroy the treaty that would have brought our peoples together. He calls us primitives. He says our blood is filth. But I ask you to look at what he has done. He attacked his own king. He murdered innocent people. Is this the way? Is this who you want to be? Daniel looked directly into the camera. We came here to help. We still want to help, but we will not be conquered. Not today, not ever. The choice is yours now. What kind of future do you want? He cut the broadcast and stepped back. His hands were shaking. Put a hand on his shoulder. That was brave. It was all I could think of, Daniel admitted. Now all they could do was wait. By morning, the answer came. The people of Prime rose up against. Soldiers who had followed him out of fear turned against him when they saw the truth. The noble houses declared him a traitor. General was captured before the sun set. His rebellion had lasted less than a day. Daniel watched from the palace balcony as was led away in chains. The general looked up and met Daniel's eyes. There was hatred there, but also something else, something like disbelief. He had never imagined that a single human could stop him. But Daniel knew the truth. It was not just him. It was courage, strength, Laura's determination. It was everyone who had refused to give up, even when the odds were against them. That was what it meant to be human. And now the galaxy would know it too. 1 month had passed since the night of fire and blood. Prime had changed. The scars of rebellion were still visible on the palace walls, but new growth was already covering the damage. They were rebuilding, not just their buildings, but their future. The treaty signing was held again, this time in a garden beneath the 3 moons. It was a smaller ceremony, more personal. King had recovered from his wound, though he moved more slowly now and leaned on a cane. His daughter stood beside him, her silver skin glowing in the moonlight. Ambassador Laura signed the document first, her pen moving with careful precision. Then King added his name, the ancient letters of his people flowing across the page like water. "The treaty of shared blood," the king said, his voice carrying across the garden. "May it be the beginning of something greater than either of our peoples alone." Applause rose from the gathered witnesses. Humans and stood together, no longer strangers but allies. It was a moment that would be remembered for generations. In the weeks that followed, the alliance began to take shape. A team of human doctors arrived aboard the medical frigate Healing Hand, bringing volunteers who were willing to give their blood to help the blood was offered freely, never demanded, and each donation was treated with the respect it deserved. King himself received a transfusion from the volunteer team. The human blood helped him heal faster, restoring some of the strength he had lost to age and injury. When he stood before his people again, he looked 10 years younger. "This is the gift the humans have given us," he told the assembly. "Not just their blood, but their trust. They came to us as strangers and asked for nothing in return. We would do well to learn from their example." They honored their part of the treaty as well. They shared their star maps, opening new routes through space that humans had never imagined. They shared their medical technology, techniques that advanced human medicine by centuries in just a few months. And they offered their protection, the strength of the fleet standing beside humanity in the vast darkness between the stars. But perhaps the greatest gift was understanding. For the first time, humans began to truly see each other. They shared stories and songs, food and friendship. The walls that had separated them began to crumble, replaced by bridges built of curiosity and respect. Daniel Carter was given the Star of Valor in a private ceremony at the palace. It was the highest honor their civilization could give, and he was the first human ever to receive it. The star was made of the same crystal as the palace towers, cut into a shape that caught the light and scattered it like a rainbow. King placed the medal around Daniel's neck with his own hands. "You have changed the fate of my people, Daniel Carter. Your courage will be remembered in our songs for as long as we endure." Daniel looked at the medal, then at the king. I am grateful for the honor, Your Majesty, but I did not do this alone. Cole, Ambassador, Captain Gray, and many others risked their lives too, and Princess gave me the courage to keep going when everything seemed lost." The king smiled, a warm expression that softened his ancient features. "You are humble, young human. That is another quality my people could learn from yours. But do not diminish what you have done. You saw someone dying and you chose to help, even at great risk to yourself. That single act set everything else in motion." He placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the universe. After the ceremony, Daniel walked through the palace gardens alone. The air was sweet with the scent of alien flowers, and the 3 moons cast soft shadows across the silver grass. He had been offered a position as a diplomatic liaison between humans and a chance to stay on Prime and be part of the growing alliance. He had turned it down. The Starward Hope was leaving in the morning, heading back to human space to report on everything that had happened. Daniel would be aboard, back in his medical bay, back to the work he knew and loved. He was not meant for politics or ceremonies. He was meant to help people, one patient at a time. Footsteps approached from behind. Daniel did not need to turn to know who it was. "You are leaving tomorrow," said, coming to stand beside him. "Yes. I wished you would stay." Daniel turned to look at her. In the moonlight she seemed almost unreal, a creature of light and shadow. But her eyes were warm and human, filled with the same emotions he saw in his own reflection. "I am a medic, that is who I am. There are people out there who need help and I need to be there for them. I cannot be a symbol or a hero, I just need to do my job." Nodded slowly. "I understand, and I respect your choice, but know this, Daniel Carter. You will always have a home here. You will always be welcome among my people. The bond between us cannot be broken by distance or time." She reached into her robes and pulled out a small pendant on a silver chain. It was shaped like a drop of blood, carved from deep red crystal. "This belonged to my mother," she said. "She died when I was young, but she always told me that blood connects us to those we love. Take this, and know that part of me goes with you wherever you travel." Daniel took the pendant with careful hands. It was warm to the touch, as if it held its own inner light. "I do not know what to say." Smiled. "You do not need to say anything. Just promise me that you will take care of yourself. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers. I would not want to hear that something had happened to you." Daniel put the pendant around his neck, feeling its weight against his chest. "I promise." They stood together in silence for a long moment, watching the moons move slowly across the sky. There was so much Daniel wanted to say, so many feelings he could not put into words. But sometimes words were not needed. Sometimes it was enough just to be together. The next morning, Daniel walked up the ramp of the Starward Hope. The crew was already aboard, preparing for departure. Captain Gray met him at the airlock with a tired smile. "Ready to go home, Lieutenant?" Daniel looked back at the palace one last time, was standing on the landing platform, her white hair blowing in the wind. She raised her hand in farewell. He raised his own hand in return. "Yes, Captain, I am ready." The ship lifted off from Prime and rose through the atmosphere, leaving the crystal towers and silver forests behind. Daniel watched through the viewport as the planet grew smaller and smaller, until it was just a point of light among millions of others. He touched the pendant around his neck and smiled. He had gone to Velar 7 to collect air samples. He had found a dying princess and given her his blood. He had helped stop a rebellion and forged an alliance between 2 civilizations. None of it had been planned. None of it had been expected. But that was life, Daniel thought. You never knew what was waiting for you around the next corner. You could only do your best, help when you could, and hope that it mattered. Dr. Lisa Park found him still standing at the viewport an hour later. "You did a good thing, Daniel," she said quietly. "I did my job." Lisa shook her head. No, you did more than that. You showed them who we are, what we can be. That matters. Daniel did not argue. Maybe she was right. Maybe one act of kindness really could change the universe. He turned away from the viewport and headed back to the medical bay. There were supplies to organize and equipment to check. The Starward Hope was returning to human space, but there would be other missions, other people who needed help. And Daniel would be ready. As he walked through the corridor, he passed a window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Prime was shining, a world of silver and crystal and hope. And somewhere on that world, a princess was watching the same stars, remembering the human who had given his blood to save her life. Their story was not over, it was just beginning. Daniel smiled and kept walking. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and he was part of it now, in ways he had never imagined. That was enough. That was everything.